Most of the videos or courses that I've seen on understanding Dan Harmon's story circle have all come from the perspective of story theory, of just trying to teach you how to actually use these 8 beats to teach you how to continue your story, to keep the momentum going, to keep the change going. But I think that there's an inherent value to trying to understand how the story circle can apply to your personal journey as a writer. And I think that the lack of understanding of that, how it applies to you as a person, and how story interacts with you and your spirit is the reason that a lot of people, despite maybe understanding the story theory of it all, still manage to get stuck at like that page 40 mark and really struggle to get their story going. I think that when we pull up the story circle, it's really important to find a graph that actually gives us the order and chaos cycle in the graph. And I think that not understanding that part of it is a big reason that we struggle to use this tool sometimes. I think that us as writers inherently get stuck wanting to exist in that top half of the circle, which is inherently the more logical side of the circle. That is something that's easier to exist in on a conscious level, is more comfortable, and really all of the story theory that we hold is more easily applicable to that top half. It is the order side of things. That's very much the left side of your brain, right? When a story is really well written, what it's essentially doing is it's taking a character through this entire cycle in the most dramatic and effective way we can through the circle. But us as humans, we tend to go through this cycle a lot, but I think that we tend to zip through the cycle living in that top half in the order side of things effectively, but then we want to skip through the bottom half because that's where things get painful. That is where we're having to face problems in our lives. We're having to face our past. It's where kind of the defining moments of our life have taken place, and a lot of times we just don't want to have to face those parts of our lives. Mental breakdowns can happen when we spend way too long not facing our unconscious self, which the unconscious self is that chaos underneath, and the conscious mind is the order side of things. The way that Dan Harmon explains it is as if we have 2 sides to our house. The top level of our house is where we greet people. We let them in. It's where we stay. It's where we live. It's where we have guests over and enjoy our lives. And then the basement of our house, the underside of it, is where we have all of the piping, the water heater, the water heater that might be malfunctioning. We have cracks in our foundation and things like that. It's the area of the house that we never want to go to, but if we ignore it for too long, if we never go down there and fix the infrastructure, if we fix the foundation, fix the piping, if we don't do that, then that's what leads to a collapse, which is a mental breakdown, an identity crisis, something like that. The longer we take to actually face that underbelly, the more damaged all of those pieces will become, and the more expensive it will be to repair those pieces. So us as humans, we spend a lot of time ignoring those pieces and going through those cycles. So to give a very common example, let's say that in your life, your parents got divorced, one of your parents left, or someone broke up with you that you cared a lot about. That's going to be an emotionally definitive event because that was inherently someone that was very close to you, and as a result of those events, you're probably going to feel like because of their actions, you're not worthy of love. You weren't good enough for them, they left, so thus you're going to start making decisions thinking that you aren't worthy. You're not going to chase what you desire because you're not good enough. You are not going to make the right decisions because you're not good enough, and the justification for that is going to be rooted in that kind of the external event of your parent leaving or, your significant other leaving. That is something that happened to you externally, but the effects of that move from that order side externally down to the chaos side of things. It's something that becomes rooted inside of you, and it becomes kind of the lens through which you see the world on an unconscious level if you never face that. You may not think about why you make the decisions you do and the way you do, but there are justifications for it that start in the order side of things and eventually become rooted in the chaos, if that makes sense. So really what a therapist does is they meet with you and they ask about the feelings that you have about certain events. They ask why you think certain things. They ask why you feel the way that you do about certain things. Or really what they're doing is they're looking at the way that you see the world around you, and they're trying to help you dig into the chaos side of your life. They're trying to find those hidden nuggets of where things actually started and why you have the perceptions that you do, right? So a big part of story and using the story circle as a writer is understanding that you have to actually face your story. If the story is coming back to you, that's because there's something in it that means something to you, right? So you have to actually be willing to take the plunge into those difficult parts of yourself to understand why certain things are happening. In a story near the end of the second act, it's common for a character's ghost to come out. A ghost scene is that moment where the character sits down and tells the other their backstory, right? This is the moment where the justification for their actions comes out because of things that have happened in their past. That is exactly what you need to do as a writer. You have to be able to confront your own ghosts, which is a very scary thing. In one of the podcasts I really like listening to called The Screenwriter's Life, they call this concept stepping into the lava. That's because you have to make a descent into that, and it's very painful. Sometimes it can be emotionally wrenching and things like that, but what it does is like you submerge yourself into it to fully understand where that's actually coming from, and then you can surface it. You can bring it up to the top, and that's what people call like releasing, I guess you could call it like the traumas or things like that. Not everything in the chaos side of your life is actually going to be traumatic, but you're still going to have the justifications for all of the reasons that you do things. So you have to be willing to step into that lava and surface things, bring them up, which will be the justifications for why you do things in your life, and thus those should be the justifications that your characters have for why they do certain things, right? So I think kind of taking a 30,000 foot view on the story circle is pretty important, because I think a lot of what writing a story truly is teaching yourself to actually go through the entire circle. You're going to have an idea for what you want your story to be, which is going to be something personally important to you, right? So you have to just like take that idea, take that kernel, and be willing to actually try to use the canvas of the story to be a means to actually go through the entire circle for yourself. You have to, start out being like, okay, this is what I want, but actually dip into that unfamiliar situation. Like, man, I haven't wanted to think about this or talk about this or think about that person or this event for a long time, but actually allow yourself to go there and explore all of those things on the page. And I think it's really important to actually go through the entire circle here without judging it. So we have that left side of our mind, which is going to be wanting to judge all of these things. But if you actually go in and you allow yourself to be unjudged and sifting through all of these pieces, that's something that people talk about with a therapist, is they don't want to be judged when they're talking about all of these things in their life. As a writer, you have to make sure that you don't allow yourself to judge what you write when kind of parsing through all of these pieces for yourself. So allow yourself to step into the lava and kind of bring it all to the surface and write it in just the ugliest, most honest way that you actually can, and you'll find an emotional catharsis probably through being that honest. And through being that honest is where you'll actually get those pieces for your second and your third act, where there's an actual vulnerability, there's an actual honesty that comes up through these characters because you were willing to go there yourself. So really my encouragement to you in understanding this is the idea of conscious versus unconscious mind, which is kind of a big word that can seem scary at first and like hard to understand. Really what that means is the conscious mind are just these actions that we take. We have the freedom in the current moment to make conscious choices. That is what we have. We have the power to make choice. But those choices are influenced by the unconscious mind. And what the unconscious mind is really just the criteria that we have built up to see the world through. The unconscious mind is everything that's happened to us that then directs how we see the rest of the world, right? So really just unpacking that and being willing to go through those hard steps is a really important thing for ourselves. And I think you may never be able to tell the story you want to tell in the way you want to tell it, as deeply and as richly and as vividly as you want to tell it, if you never allow yourself to actually go through that chaotic part of the circle. But I think that actually going all the way through that cycle is oftentimes what allows someone to change on that 8th beat, allows someone to free themselves of the past burdens. But you have to actually go through that circle to be able to find that change, right? So if you feel like you kind of run through your circles avoiding certain things in your life that you're talking about, that's probably why you're getting stuck at page 40. And I would kind of change your perspective on the story circle as not only being story theory, something that, you know, are beats to follow, but I would consider it a tool for personal improvement, for vetting yourself, trying to improve yourself. I think that's really what the journey of being a writer is taking these problems from your life and allowing yourself and your characters to walk through these steps together and then dramaticizing it. You know, some of these things are probably things that have been instilled in you for years and years and hidden under the surface, right? And that's okay. But I think that no one wants to watch a story, usually, maybe there are exceptions, where, you know, it takes literal years for the characters to go through these steps. You know, part of the thrill of a story, of making things dramatic, is being able to see this journey, this inward and external journey, kind of spiraling together in a rapid pace, where we can see this transformation within a 2-hour time period at the movies, right? But these transformations, though, don't happen for us in 2 hours. They're a process, and learning to actually work through that process to then be able to funnel it into a 2-hour microcosm is really your goal. But you have to spend that time going through that cycle for yourself. That's my encouragement to you. Hopefully that helps you understand the function of the story circle a little bit better. I didn't want to script this video too tightly or anything, because I think it's important to not overbear it with the left side of our mind right now, to just express that there is a big emotional vulnerability in writing that you have to allow yourself to go through. And I think that understanding that side of the order and the chaos of the story circle of writing a story is very, very important, not just for the story theory, but for you as a writer. Kind of what I want to leave this on is that anyone can learn story theory, right? Anyone can learn those first 4 steps. Anyone can learn that top order side of the equation. But any good story, I would argue, that you probably love, you love because of the voice that came through from the artist, because of the personal perspective, because of the details that they notice, right? And those things only come through because they were willing to dig into the chaos and bring it to the surface for you to see. They were willing to bare their soul. They were willing to bare their struggles, their conflicts, their resolutions and changes to those conflicts for you to see. And obviously not everything in the story has to be exactly what you lived through, but you can channel that through one of your characters and then see an opposite perspective from your antagonist or another party in the film, and then just like working through with those pieces. So I would argue that being willing to work through the chaos of the story circle is your voice as a writer, and that's what is ultimately going to make your writing stand out, and that's what's going to make it special, is because we want to hear from you. We want to hear about your journey. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, guys. Once you're willing to actually face your fears and dig into the depths of this chaos, if you feel like you still need help, just kind of pushing through the story, because like there is an inherent value to structuring your process and using story theory to kind of mold the clay that you have on the table. If you feel like you still need help getting to that point of actually finishing the screenplay, then check out this next video I have over here, which is just really on how to actually finish your screenplay when you're struggling with that. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and we'll see you next time.